We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good.
Hello and welcome to La La Land on LA Talk Live. I'm Brett Chapin, and
I'm not Dorothy Dillingham Blue.
You're definitely not, Van Eric.
But Brett has allowed me once again to co-host.
Oh, allowed you? Come on, you're part of the show. You're like the third co-host.
I'm the third
co-host. Been here every week.
Yes,
with us, working hard.
Yes.
Dorothy is not with us. She is rehearsing for her show. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
Exactly. She's playing
Lucy.
Lucy.
Yeah, it's opening next weekend.
Is she actually going to have like a football for Charlie Brown to kick and then remove it?
I hope so.
That's going to be the highlight of the show if I'm able to go see that. I would love to see that part. If she does that, I can leave the show happy.
She'll be great. She'll be great. She told me that Charlie that she's working with is really great. And of course, she's working with Kristen Towers-Rolls, who's an old friend of the show, and their entire group over there at Sustaining Sound Theater does a great job.
They even called last week and gave us a little preview.
I know, that was cool, right?
Yeah.
We had Ryan Rolls from Sustaining Sound Theater on. The cast called in and gave us a song over the phone. It was great.
I know.
Yeah.
La La Land Talk, I'm telling you.
La La Land Talk. Today on the show, we have John Lawrence Rivera and Doug Clayton of the LA Theater Network. They're going to be talking to us about everything that the LA Theater Network is doing to improve theater in Los Angeles.
Outstanding.
Yes. But before we get to them, I need to remind everyone to make sure to go out to Theater Palisades. Visit theaterpalisades.com and check out Black Coffee. It's an Agatha Christie murder mystery, and it's running for the next 4 weeks at Theater Palisades, theaterpalisades.com. Wow. After that, and I think I can announce this on air now, after that we have The Marvelous Wonderettes coming in. It's a musical. It's a great musical, and Mr. Steve Guttenberg is going to be one of the executive producers on that.
Wow.
So we're really excited to have Steve with us, and really excited to do the show. It's really it's a great show, a lot of good music. And
yeah. Are you going to be able to get anybody from that show to come on in?
I think I might want to try and do that, yeah.
Well, you had that appeal that can bring people together. I have to say this because Brett allowed me to have one of my bucket lists crossed off. He had Spike Lee call in, and I happened to be able to interview him, so that was outstanding.
Yeah, that was very cool to have him here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not about me though. We're lucky to have really good guests on the show.
Well, but you have something to do with that, man. You bring people together, like the two gentlemen we have today.
Exactly. Enough about me. Let's talk about the gentlemen we have today.
There you go.
Doug Clayton and John Lawrence Rivera from the LA Theater Network. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
If you have any questions for either of our guests, make sure to give us a call at 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100. We're also taking questions on Twitter at La La Land Talk. So, guys, the LA Theater Network. This is a new group that's been formed within the last
4 months.
4 months?
Yeah, 5 months. It was like March or whenever the last LA Stage Day was. I think it was.
That was in May.
So in May, so since May,
pretty new.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the reason for putting together the group? What's behind what you guys are doing?
Well, the impetus for it was that last May when I attended the LA Stage Day, I was talking to a lot of my colleagues, and I started hearing a lot of complaints about just the state of Los Angeles theater. People are not getting paid as much. They're not getting a lot of attention. There's not a lot of support for artists, and I keep hearing this from many different components of the community, whether they are producers or they are actors or designers. And I kept saying, well, why don't you guys talk to somebody? And they said, well, we don't know who to talk to. They said, we don't know who even to approach about this, and they feel like whoever they've spoken with don't really take them seriously because they're just an individual. So I said, well, we should have a conversation about it. And I started inviting a lot of these people who I talked to at that day, and the rest of the community to come and join us at this in a newly established group called LA Theater Network. And it's really just a place for anyone who has an investment in theater, would want to come and talk about their problems or issues about LA theater. The only thing that they have to do, though, when they come to the meeting is that they have to provide a solution, whether it's a solution that we're going to solve or not, or that we're going to use. But because I just didn't want the meeting to be a bitch session and just talk about all the problems and then say, all right, well, that's good that we heard the problems and let's think about those problems. Yeah. And I really wanted to come out of a meeting and have some kind of resolution. And I think if anyone was coming in and bringing in a question or a problem and they had a possible solution, then we're already starting the conversation of how do we solve it.
I like the idea of bringing in answers to the problems. It's very important. There's a lot of complaining that goes on about LA theater, and not that the points aren't valid, but I think coming in with a solution or a possible solution is a great way of doing it. So let's break it down then. What are the problems with LA theater as the LA Theater Network sees it?
That's a very broad question.
Yeah. Well, we had talked about 4 different points, so I was wondering if maybe you could break down those 4 points.
Sure. Well, I mean, as far as the network goes, I think more broadly, the great thing about the way John set it up was that it really is an open forum, and each of the meetings that I've been to, and I've only been to maybe half of them, depending on who's in the room, depending on who's passionate about what, depending on what ideas people have, the conversation becomes about very different aspects of what's going on. And the thing that's really been clear to me in those meetings and in other meetings has been that, this is a really diverse community. This is a huge city with lots of different artists and other people who are involved with the theater, whether they're producers or supporters or funders or press or whoever, who have lots of different opinions. And I've been in a bunch of conversations lately that have kind of crystallized a few key things, even outside of the network. And one of the top, really, of those 4 things is that there's really a lot of different kinds of activity with a lot of different kinds of motivation happening in LA theater.
Activity insofar as?
Like there are groups of artists who don't have any money who are getting together to create a piece of work. And that's not about, which there's that kind of thing. Then there's people who are actually want to build a theater institution, right? And who they're starting with maybe nothing, but their goal is to build a fully functional nonprofit business that gives back to the community, the citizens of LA and that kind of thing. Then you have folks who already have nonprofit business institutions and are hiring artists in to do things. And then you have the sort of the old story of the vanity production or the commercially inclined production where somebody has a bunch of money and is dropping it on a show to develop it or to try it out or to showcase themselves or whatever.
Right.
And all 4 of those are radically different things with different motivations, different causes, different reasons to be involved with it, to support it. And I think one of the big issues, the biggest issue, if I had to choose myself, is that all of those kinds of activity are being treated by the unions, by the funders, by the press, by the audiences as the same. And when you do that, I don't think it serves any of them well. So
they use different contracts for those different types of projects. Am I right about that?
Well, it depends, because sometimes a nonprofit organizations like myself, with my theater, Playwrights Arena, we would work under the 99-seat plan, but somebody who has and we probably spend about $20,000 to $25,000 per show, and there is somebody who is a TV star and who plugs in, $150,000 for a 99-seat theater production, and all of a sudden they have obviously a set that is now a $15,000 set. Now they have a press agent, a press representative that is a $10,000 press representative. So, but the everybody else looks at it as a 99-seat theater, production, because they're both now, the $25,000 production and the $150,000 production are now in everybody's mind equal. And so they're judging everything in the same kind of level, and in some cases, which is the most upsetting part for me, is that sometimes there are other companies who are actually spending upwards of $200,000 per production in a 99-seat theater plan, and they're still paying their actors the minimum, which is $9 to $12 a show.
Right.
And you sort of go, wait a minute, how are you spending $250,000 on a production and yet still paying your actors $12 a show?
You mean you can't earn a living on $12 a show?
but the issue of the different types of things not being treated the same goes the other way too, because when you really do have, here's 6 friends who don't have any money and they want to work on a piece or try a new play or something. Mm-hmm. And they're putting all the money in it themselves. They don't have a nonprofit. They're not getting donations, none of that. But then they still have to pay themselves that $10 or $12 a show, which is still hundreds of dollars in the end for the whole thing, which they're taking out of their own bank account and then putting into a budget that then they have to pay themselves and sometimes pay taxes on themselves. Like, at the other end, it gets weird too, because again, it's not just the rules are being applied in this sort of blanket way to everybody, even though there's radically different things going on.
So as the LA Theater Network, you're looking at going to Actors Equity, which is the union for actors, and talking to them about making some changes in all this.
Well, not necessarily for the network itself, because we are not a we don't have a board of directors. We don't have we're not a governing entity. But what we want to do is to have the dialogue so that then the suggestions would come to, we should talk to Equity, or we should ask LA Stage Alliance to help us get to a conversation. Mm-hmm. We need to ask the the newly formed Producers League to help us get these things figured out, because we can have a conversation, but we are not representing the LA community. Okay. We are a voice, and we are a voice that's trying to make the movement. So here's an example of what we can do, and what we have done. We felt that the that the $9 or $12 per performance is really low for actors. We don't have a lot of money, and most of theaters, but I think there is not going to be a big change of making that minimum be different anytime soon, because there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen before anything like that could happen at the equity level position level. So we ask for volunteers. We ask for several theaters to voluntarily make their minimum be $25 per show. Mm-hmm. And we got about 20 theaters already who signed up saying, we will make that commitment. We will jump up. Instead of just paying the $9 or $12 per show, we are now going to pay $25. Playwrights Arena is one of them, and the commitment we've asked from theaters is that we would start it as of January 1st of 2015. But most theaters who have signed on already are starting it at this fall, and like Playwrights Arena is already paying the $25 for our current production.
And how many theaters have given the go-ahead on this?
About 20.
About 20 theaters in Los Angeles.
99-seat theaters, yeah. Obviously, the larger theaters that are on union contracts and things already do that. So,
right.
Yeah. But I think it's really useful to note. The way John set this up initially was, I remember vividly him saying, we are not creating an organization, we are not creating bylaws, we are not doing any of that stuff that's can get in the way of the purpose, which is for there to be open dialogue and people to do things. And when he says, we asked a bunch of theaters for that, it doesn't mean a formal entity asked the theaters, and it doesn't mean the 700 and some odd people who are on the Facebook group. It means that there were 10 or 15 people at one of the meetings who said, yeah, let's do this. The 10 or 15 of them, without having to get consensus from 700 people or from 30 people. The 15 of them said, let's call some theaters and see what they say, and came back and said, great, 20 theaters are going to do that. And I think that really gets to the spirit of what the network has become and the way John envisioned it and what it is, where it's not about a formal entity, and it's not even about a formal group of people. I mean, John was gone this summer, and there were 2 meetings and things happening that he wasn't involved with at all. So it's I think of it more as kind of like a bullhorn that you pass around, and not as a voice or a force or a it's just an opportunity that's inviting, that is also action oriented, as opposed to being just as John said, a bitch session. So I think it's important to get that clarity. It's not the network is not a new LA Stage Alliance. It's not a new Producers League. It's not a new nonprofit. It's not any of those things.
But it is a group that would like to work with the Stage Alliance and the Producers League to bring about some positive change.
Yes, make suggestions. Yeah.
And the way I've seen it go so far is a group of people have thought about something, and the network helps them sort of crystallize what that is, and then the people who have access to the Producers League or to the LA Stage Alliance or the unions can then go to those groups that actually have structure and authority and power to do things, and make those things happen there. So,
and we've been very open to having LA Stage or the Producers League or Equity to come in and join into the conversation, because I feel like, and they have. I mean, some of the members of the Producers League have come into the meetings and have addressed some of the issues that we've been dealing with. And interestingly enough, and this is the thing that Doug would always say, is that we should really figure out so that we're not like 6 different companies or organizations trying to make a change. And like, maybe it's already in the process. Maybe the Producers League is already in the process of changing the minimum wage. Maybe they're in the process of doing these things. So once we know that is being done, then we say, okay, well, it's being handled by the Producers League. They're now taking care of this of this issue, and they're actually, and we can then keep following up and saying, so what's happened? Right. Did you have the meeting? Did you? So it's not just like you say you're going to do it and then no follow up, and then we don't know 2 years later nothing has happened.
There will be follow through.
That's
and important.
Yes, I think it's important to make the to make things move along.
Has the LA has the Stage Alliance had a chance to attend any of your meetings?
They have not, but I have spoken with
some of their staff have.
Some of the staff, but Terrence in particular, I've invited him, but he's just never had the chance to, with his schedule, to come in. But he did. I had a sit down meeting with him when we were first starting this network, and he did say that anything that he can offer, just ask him, and and he would help.
That's great.
Yeah.
He's a busy guy. I've been trying to get him on the show for 3 years. But, yeah. So why couldn't the Producers League or the LA Stage Alliance just handle this? What makes it important for the LA Theater Network to handle this? What made you want to sort of jump in and take care of the job?
Okay. Well, to me, the creation of LA Theater Network, it's a faster, it's a fast track kind of way of addressing issues, because here's the thing. I think the Producers League, because they have a board. I mean,
council.
A council. They have members. It takes it took them a whole year to just figure out their mission statement. And then once that was approved, then now now they have to have another meeting to decide what the next question's going to be and how are they going to address that. So
there's been some complaints that they're slow moving.
Yeah.
So although I do want to specifically say that last week they announced that they are entering collective bargaining with the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society Union, and that's fantastic. And that's sort of a huge sea change thing that they have finally stepped up and committed to do, and that is a big deal. So,
yeah. I mean, they've been guests on the show. I think what they're doing is great. It's not moving as fast as some people would like it to, but I understand these things take time. And
and as John's talking about the structure that they have to follow the steps that they have to follow, which is totally fair.
Sure,
right.
Makes sense.
And I think what we're trying to do with the network is that if we can give an example, like these 20 or so theater companies already saying we're going to pay $25, we're going to volunteer paying $25 minimum for our actors. we're already starting the the conversation, and it's already being actively working, even if the league, if the producers league are trying to work out something else, but at least it's already in motion for some theaters. We're not waiting for the league or for LA Stage or for Actors Equity to make any changes 2 years, 3 years down the line for something to really be in effect. Right now, we're actually voluntarily saying we're making those changes now. We don't have to wait for Equity. We're not doing anything illegal with Equity because their minimum was $9 to $12, so we're paying $25, and we're not doing anything that is like outside of anybody's expectation. I mean, I think it would be awful if you said, I think we should pay our actors $1 per show. Then I think that would be a big raucous for everybody. But we're not. We're actually saying we're going to keep moving forward. And our big issues are, how do we get visibility? How do we get our actors more visibility? How our directors more jobs? And how do we really do that? Who do we need to talk to?
Well, let me know if you find the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's a big question. It's a big question.
One.
It's one that, and you heard our conversations this last week. I mean, it's really about our visibility as a theater. And is there too many theaters? Are there do we need to to pull our resources together, and how do we pull our resources together? So
I got a chance to go to your meeting last weekend. I think there was some great conversation that went on there. Yeah. And every time somebody got into a little bit of the complaining, your response was, well, what's your answer? And I thought that was great.
Yeah. Because I just don't, I hear it all the time, and I've been hearing it. I've been around, I've had Playwrights Arena for 22 years, and I've heard everybody's complaints about LA theater, and I go, well, what's the solution? Let's get the solution. Let's figure out the solution.
I mean, I've been to meetings, theater meetings with different groups last year, and some of the conversations got really, really heated. People feel very strongly and very, very passionately about these issues. And I think it's good that it's being talked about.
Yeah.
And $25 is it's wonderful what you're doing with that, but even that's not.
No, it's only a step, and of course the interesting thing is once you announce that there are 20 companies or so that are bumping up their fees, the first question people ask, well, what about rehearsals? I said, you can only do one step at a time, because we can't now all of a sudden, all right, well, everybody's going to get paid $25 per show, and everybody's going to get $10 per hour for rehearsals, and no one will sign up.
Right.
I mean, it's a step. So I'm hoping this $25 per actor for per show in the 99-seat plan will become more of a regular thing, and then we can start thinking about, okay, now what do we do with rehearsals? Do we give them a stipend? Can we get 40 theaters to say that we're going to give them $200 for a stipend for rehearsal to begin with? Can we do that? And I mean, but you can't do all of it. I feel like you can only do one step at a time.
Yeah, you can't ask,
because it's hard. Otherwise,
it's
people who have budgets like myself, less than $100,000 a year, you go, well, how am I going to come up with that money? And and you really want to, and just have to really figure out a way to strategize that.
And I should note too that we've been talking a lot about the $25 a show, or the artist pay thing, and that's obviously a huge deal in lots of different ways. But in the network, that's only one of the conversations that's come up. I mean, there's been conversations about all sorts of other issues, all sorts of things like, connection to the TV and film companies through so many of the theater people who work in film and TV who have those connections. Like there's, I think at the last network meeting, discussion about having sort of a mini conference or something in January, right? So lots of other things that are not, it's not an advocacy group just to pay people more. That's one thing that a lot of people are passionate about, but there's a lot of other conversations. And the point is that the network can facilitate a conversation. And as you said, and what I'm coming to realize after 15 to 20 years in this community, is that the most important thing that we fail at so much of the time is being able to have open conversations about the hard stuff without being scared. Like there's an awful lot of people who have a lot of strong feelings and a lot of great ideas who don't say them in public spaces because they don't feel safe.
Because they're afraid what's going to happen.
Because they're afraid they'll get shouted down. I was talking to a prominent LA producer, 99-seat and mid-sized producer who goes back and forth the other day, and he said, he's like, I've gotten up on the soapbox a couple of times and thrown out big ideas and like big questions, and then I've been nailed to the wall and lit on fire and told that I'm trying to destroy LA theater, and I'm like, okay, well I don't do that anymore. And that's what is my biggest concern, honestly, because we can have there's lots of different solutions, there's lots of different choices, there's lots of different ways this community could change, whether it's union stuff or whether it's grassroots like John's talking about, the networks does, or any other way. But first we have to kind of get a little bit of a spirit of, okay, I'm going to say what I think,
Sure.
and you can say what you think, and we can disagree, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean that either one of us is wrong or either one of us is trying to destroy all of Los Angeles theater or any of that. It just means
That's what an open dialogue is. You should be
Yeah.
able to say
Right.
how you feel,
Right.
in any meeting, any
Yeah.
situation.
But
What-
it's challenging in in an industry where most of us work show to show, and everybody's got this nervousness about upsetting somebody who tomorrow will be the person who could hire them or give them
Yeah,
an
that's
opportunity,
true.
and so it's a cultural thing that is challenging. I think some other places in the world are a little better about, I'll just say what I think and you say what you think, and it's not personal.
Mm-hmm.
But California in general, Los Angeles in general,
Artists are sensitive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Oversensitive sometimes.
yeah.
And I'm the same way too, but people got to get over it. Yeah, I agree.
Well, as much as we can encourage people to
yeah.
speak up.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we had talked about is something that's sort of separate from the net. Well, I'll get back to that. This is what amazes me about LA theater, and as far as the pay situation goes, music directors are amazingly talented individuals. They work their butts off, clearly,
Right.
but they're there the same amount of time that the actors are there for performances and rehearsals. Music directors in Los Angeles get paid thousands of dollars for shows, and I'm amazed that the actors are getting $12 a show. That's interesting, or even
Yeah.
25.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice that the network is talking about improving that, because I think it's great.
Yeah.
Are you looking to maybe renegotiate the 99C contract, or just get rid of it altogether? What
You
would be
can't.
in a perfect world?
That's a very,
if
very
it was
good.
up to you.
If it was up to us, I think we have to look at a new.
Let's speak individually here.
If
at
it's
this
up to us, and my personal view is that we have to really look at a different model. You
Okay.
have to completely take it out and start anew for what is 2014, what we need now. I mean, this plan was created in the 80s and then revised in the 90s, and we sort of like stayed with it in the 90s. And listen, I mean, it brought a lot of vibrant theaters, when it first was created, but it's sort of like my feeling is that it stayed in there for such a long time and nobody wanted to touch it.
Right.
And to their advantages or whatever, it's like they just want to keep it, let's just that looks good. We pay them, we get 36 hours a week of rehearsal for 6 weeks and we don't have to pay them. That's great. And then we only pay them $9 and $12 a show. Fantastic. I can do this. So in the beginning, I think it was really a great way of recharging, to really just getting a whole, bunch of theaters to come up and create beautiful work. But I think we sort of like nobody even touched it after a while, like in the 2000s. Now nobody's like, okay, well, it's just fine. I think it's time to really look at it and look at a different model and create a new model for Los Angeles.
I asked that question a lot on this show over the last 3 years, and not a single person has ever said the 99C contract should just stay as it is.
Really?
Every single person has either said it needs to be relooked at, it needs to be renegotiated, or some people have said they need to get rid of it and have a whole new contract.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can see both sides, because I've worked under 99C contracts in Los Angeles and been paid, and I've had good opportunities because of them. But at the same time, I can also see how it's a little antiquated. It was made in the 80s. It doesn't quite apply to what's going on in LA theater now as much as it did.
This is one of the things that, for me, and I'll speak just for me here, is really one of the concerns I have about not just the 99C plan with equity, but with all the different union agreements, and honestly with a lot of the other systems too, is that in other places, like the LORT theaters, the large theaters, or like smaller theaters in different parts of the country, or different big cities, those plans, those agreements, those contracts, those codes are on a more regular schedule first of all, they actually get negotiated by somebody, which most of the contracts in Los Angeles don't. And it's, they go, it's just like any of the big union agreements you see in the press, right? They go 3 years or 5 years, and then they expire. And the employers on one side, or the producers on one side, and the unions on the other, have to come to an agreement about what a new thing is going to be for the next 3 or 5 years. And that at least allows a process that's formalized where people have to come back to a table and go, is everything still the same? Is it all good? Or, no, now this has changed in the world. Social media has changed, or whatever's changed. And so we need to make adjustments.
They don't have somebody negotiating the contracts in Los Angeles theater? Really?
No.
Wow.
Not below the Lort houses. There's either the unions are propagating agreements where the unions just tell you, or there are individual producers negotiating their individual deals, which most of the unions make them do sort of every year. But that's only applying to one theater or one show sometimes, not a whole thing. There isn't a... That's why this thing with the Intimate Producers League, which is 60, 99-seat theaters, saying they're going to collectively bargain with the director and choreographers union is such a big deal, because that's the first time, as far as I can tell, in Los Angeles ever, that you've had a group of producer employers and a union of some artists saying, we're going to do a formal process with an expiring contract that's for LA, that's good, we're actually going to do the thing that real people do. And that's why that's so exciting, and I think that more of that for the other artists and the other kinds of work happening and all those things would make a lot of sense. Because as John says, like when you set something in place and don't change it for 25 years, some of it still works and some of it doesn't.
Wasn't there a gentleman, and I'm blanking on his name, who just left Equity, who was taking care of the 99-seat contracts in Los Angeles?
Michael Van Duzer.
Michael Van Duzer. So he was handling that, but he's not anymore.
Well, he wasn't handling negotiations or anything. No, he was just the administrator who oversaw the 99-seat plan and theaters using it. But he was the only administrator at Equity ever who did, because he started in the early 80s, and he was there 30 years or whatever. And so him being let go from Actors Equity this spring, certainly freaked out a lot of people.
Yeah, it did. I don't... I'm amazed that there's no negotiator for the contracts in Los Angeles below Lord houses. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We're talking to John Lawrence Rivera and Doug Clayton of the LA Theater Network. If you have any questions for them, make sure to give us a call at 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back on La La Land on LA Talk Live.
This is Brett Chapin.
And this is Dorothy Dillingham Blue, inviting you to join us every Saturday at noon Pacific Standard Time for our show, La La Land Talk.
Join us as we talk with some of the top talent in LA. Artists' untold stories, your phone calls, and live on-location broadcasts have made La La Land one of the best sources in LA for everything entertainment.
So don't forget to tune in to La La Land Talk.
Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com.
Saturdays at noon Pacific time. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LaLaLandTalk, Twitter, twitter.com/LaLaLandTalk. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.
And we are more than just talk.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez.
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio
with a touch of recovery.
A reality show where nothing is left unsaid
and no one is insignificant who says it.
Exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, I'm Ro Williams, and I would like to invite you to join GospelRhythms.com every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our show, GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio. Join us as we celebrate Christians around the world in all genres of entertainment, as well as highlight interest stories on men and women who are making a difference and impacting their community. So don't forget to tune in to GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio, exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes under R&B or watch us live on Ustream TV. We are reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio on LATalkLive.com. We're more than just talk. We're heaven's party here on earth.
Welcome back to La La Land on LA Talk Live. I'm Brett Chapin. I forgot to say at the top of the show that this is the only nationally broadcast show by Los Angeles artists about Los Angeles artists on episode 177.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
177?
177. We're getting up there.
Yeah.
I was so distracted by Dorothy not being here in our conversation van that I forgot to give our tagline.
Wow.
How embarrassing.
Well, it does call for some applause.
Oh yeah. I have my own sounds now too.
Thank you for your support of the arts in Los Angeles, Brett.
Oh,
and
of
Van,
course.
both of you.
Yeah.
Of course.
Hugely important.
Very much so. We're talking with John Lawrence Rivera and Doug Clayton of the LA Theater Network. There we go. If you have any questions for John or Doug, make sure to give us a call at 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100, and we're also taking questions on Twitter at La La Land Talk. So, guys, we were talking about the LA Theater Network, everything that's going on with that, everything, changes that are happening, dialogue that's going on. Is there a meeting coming up that people are able to attend?
Well, we haven't set the next meeting, but it will probably happen before the end of this month or the middle of next month. And the only way to really find out right now is to be a member of the Facebook page that we have.
And what is that? Facebook /
It's LA Theater Network. L.A. Network. And the theater is ER, so in case they're looking for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not RE.
Yeah. And it's
Gotcha.
it's a closed group on Facebook, which just means you have to apply to join it, which just means you look it up, you say, I'd like to join this group, and then within probably a minute, somebody, one of the people who's involved with it will click sure, because it's completely open to anybody. So it's just a closed group as a function on Facebook to help everybody be able to see what's going on. But it's a completely inclusive, anybody who wants to can be in the Facebook group, anybody who wants to come to the meetings. There's no rules except action.
So go to the LA Theater Network site on Facebook, facebook.com/L.A.Theater Network with an RE. And is there like an E? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, with an ER. I'm so used to spelling it the theater way.
With an ER.
Theater with an ER. Is there like an email if people want to just kind of shoot you guys an email and not join the Facebook group?
Yes, and the email address is latheaternetwork@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So, something separate from the LA Theater Network is a document that is being published very soon regarding LA theater. Doug, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think off of a lot of what we've already talked about that's gone on this last couple years with things like Michael Van Duzer being let go from Equity, things like John starting the LA Theater Network, things like changes at LA Stage Alliance, things like the different activities happening with the different unions, the creation of the producers, like all of those things. Earlier this summer, a group of people, smaller group of people, were at a LA Theater Network meeting and left that meeting and went to get coffee, which people do. And they were sitting, and I was not part of this group initially. And this was like a producer and a director and a stage manager and a couple actors. And they were sitting around going, we really like the Theater Network. We really like, this sort of framing of action and incremental things. But they said, but there's some big things, and we've been talking about them for 30 years in some cases. Some of these people are getting up there and say, we've been talking about these issues, and sometimes when we have a good group of people, whether that's a cast of a show or whether that's a committee at a union or whether that's a group of producers or whatever, we come up with some really specific good solutions, or at least crystallize the issues that we need to address. And then those kind of don't go anywhere. And so this group of people said, maybe what we should do is do a little bit of a, create a document that pulls together our notes and issues and those kinds of things and thoughts, proactive, action-oriented thoughts from the last, 30 years of conversation, put them into a thing, go around to a whole bunch of people in the community in a sort of private way, to avoid the, standing up and getting nailed to the wall and lit on fire like we talked about before, and help create something that can be and initially they weren't sure what it would be, a vision or a manifesto or a call to action or whatever, and then shifted to a public discussion, and really, in a way that can start with, oh, no, it's not just 3 people saying, yes, some changes, or 1 person a week on Brett's show saying, yes, there should be changes, but there's actually a unified voice of at least, 100 people, 200 people, from all angles of the community, from the large theaters to the small theaters to the actors to producers, whatever, saying, let's really make some changes. We really have some problems, and we need to address them, without necessarily dictating, like, this is what should happen, or, or being on the extremes of nothing should change or everything should get burned down. Because nobody really, as you've demonstrated, nobody really is in either of those camps, really. Very, very few people. Most people are like, yeah, there's some changes that should happen. What's our process for doing that?
Yeah.
So those 8 or 9 people started putting this document together, which they're calling Reimagine LA Theater.
A call for action.
A call for action, right? And then they started reaching out to people. I got reached out to in kind of the second wave, and said that I would help them because I think that's a valuable thing to do. Lots of other folks. The initial document I saw was about 50 pages long. And since whenever it was, at the beginning of July or in June when they started, there's over 200 smart, connected, engaged, passionate people in LA Theater who have read the document, given feedback, called their friends, done the same. And now it's really crystallized down to something that's about 3 pages long that kind of gets at a couple of key things, some of the things we've been talking about, and then has some addendums that go with it, which are longer, but those are mostly informational. And there's some really interesting points in those addendums that we might talk about here. But and so that's getting to a point now where it's probably going to do that shift to a public conversation in the next 2 weeks. I should find out probably Monday when that's going to happen. And that's not it's not a gotcha or an attack. There's nothing in there that says, anybody, the LA Theater Network or LA Stage Alliance or the unions, anybody's doing anything wrong. It's just saying, hey, let's wake up and let's all come together and let's address some of these issues in a big way, and let's have a voice from the community to all of those leaders to say, no, really, there's people who want change here. As opposed, because right now there's a little bit of a sense of, well, do people really want it to change? And there's definitely some people who don't, and there's some people who might want change but are concerned about it. There's a lot of different voices, and this is just providing clarity that, no, there is a big group, though, who does think things need to change. That's really the core of it.
I guess coincidentally, we haven't had people on the show that feel that it shouldn't change. I mean, people have said, well, I've gotten a lot of opportunities for 99-seat plans, so it's good in that way. But no one's. I mean, I'm sure there's people that feel that way, but no one has verbalized that on this show. It seems like the majority of people really feel like there's a change necessary.
Yeah.
Great.
So that's what that is, and it should go into a public space, as I said, in the next week or two. And all of those sort of formal organizations like the unions and the LA Stage Alliance and all those already know about it. They've seen drafts as it's been created, so it's not again, it's not out to surprise anybody. That's why it's fine for me to talk about it right here. It's just been discussed in a private setting to allow it to develop to something that's clean instead of the 50-page thing that it started at.
As any document like that is discussed privately first and then made public.
Right. But just like the network, anybody who heard about it and wanted to come see it has been welcome to do so. There hasn't been any no, you're not allowed to see it. That's not what it is.
Transparent. Very open thing.
Yeah. And soon it'll be completely online and in the press and all that. So.
Can you get, because I know there were a numbered set of points. Can you briefly talk about each one of those, or is it too early?
No, well, I can go sort of sum up from my understanding, and it keeps going through drafts, and we'll, I'm sure, do another draft before, or 2 or 3. I don't know. It's gone through like 15 or 20 drafts already.
Yeah.
But the top points that the last draft I saw sort of calls out are the thing we talked about already about different kinds of behavior all being treated the same, right? Artist collectives and commercial or vanity productions and full nonprofits and people who want to grow all being in the same bucket, treated the same, which seems like that causes a lot of the confusion.
Yeah.
There's just the other thing we already talked about, which is that there hasn't been a formal, ongoing, planned process for the leaders to engage with each other. Right? LA Stage Alliance does its great stuff. Equity does its stuff. The Directors Union does its stuff. The funders do their thing. The press do their thing. But as opposed to in other cities or other times, there hasn't been any process for them to come together and work together, whether it's through collective bargaining or whether it's through a master plan process or whether it's through whatever. And there have been other examples in LA, like with the Arts for All arts education process that LA County led 15 years ago, that can get all the stakeholders together and actually clarify some goals and move things forward. So that's one piece of it. The third, if I had to count them, is about growth and about the balance of incentives and freedom, both for artists and for theater companies. It's, if you talk to producers who are interested in growth and interested in building larger institutions, most of them that I've talked to have said, if you work really hard and you get some lucky breaks, you can build your theater to be sort of a really well-functioning 99-seat theater with paid staff and with, some press recognition and maybe connected a little bit nationally, but moving to the next step beyond that to get to a mid-size house that really pays everybody and that has the support there to then have the resources to really do things like branding for the whole community, those things. That it's a big jump and it's really clunky, and part of that's the equity contracts, but part of that's other things too. Policies with the funding mechanisms and how the press treats things and lots of things that just make it really hard to make that jump.
Board members' opinions, administrators' opinions.
Sure.
Can slow things down.
The culture, all sorts of different. There's a million different reasons, and it's nobody's fault. It's just what it is. But that's one of the things a lot of people have pointed to is, right now, the incentives and the restraints kind of push you to a certain place, and people who want to get out of that have trouble. And that applies to, I don't know if you've talked to Peter Kuo, who's a local artistic director and producer and director.
I know Peter, yeah.
Yeah, he's applied that to individual artist careers and has done a lot of research about, somebody starts a 99-seat theater as a director or an actor or a producer or whatever, and it's very hard for them to get upwardly mobile and out of that. Right. To get to the national scene, to get into the larger theaters, to get, to move up in a way that in some other cities, it's hard everywhere, but in some other places it's easier. Mm-hmm. And then the last, I think, primary thing that this document's talking about is calling out some legal concerns, because there are, right now it has come to light that there are several artists who have been working in 99-seat theaters who have filed complaints with the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement with the state of California about the working conditions and payments and wages and things in not just the small theaters, but sometimes in some of the larger theaters too, about being treated as an independent contractor when they should be an employee, or being treated as a volunteer when they should be an employee, or being paid below minimum wage and those kinds of things. And last I heard, last week, the Labor Department was had gotten enough of these complaints that they have said, okay, maybe we need to actually look at this in a broader sense, not just at these 3 or 4 theaters or 5 or 6 theaters, but like, let's look at how this works. And ultimately, the question comes down to a really simple question, which is, if you've got, especially for professional union artists, where on their taxes they say, I am an actor or I'm a director, how is it, like, what is the legal support for them to get paid less than minimum wage? Especially because the national conversation right now is about, McDonald's workers getting $15 an hour and things. So it's like, okay, how does this work? And the scary thing about that to me is, I personally have asked a lot of producers, a lot of board members. I've asked some of the unions and said, some of you have talked to a lawyer, right? You have like a 1-page that explains why this is fine, right? And nobody so far has been able to just give me like, no, here's a statement about why it's fine.
Well, because we all just accept it because it's just the way that things have been done. But it's true. Actors aren't even paid minimum wage.
Yeah.
They're treated as independent contractors, and I guess in a sense they are, but they're working for a production in a theater, so they're really not. I don't know. It's
well, there's a lot of conversation about it.
That
I mean, from actors' point of view, that they feel like when they come into a 99-seat production, I mean, it's voluntary. I mean, it's a volunteer work. I mean, they're getting a little stipend, but it's a volunteer work because it's not like they are getting minimum wage. They are, so it's basically and that the thing about the 99-seat plan and the argument about it that goes with it is that, and which was somebody in the network had brought up to us, is that the 99-seat plan was created by actors. It's an actors equity plan. It's not the producer's plan. It wasn't like it's actors equity. So there are actors who are also producers, or who are actors who really truly support the 99-seat plan because they feel that having the 99-seat plan allows them to just walk out and do television and theater, television and movies anytime they want to because it's voluntary.
So then what are they doing in Chicago that's working? Where they're still able to do that in Chicago?
I think the one thing that Chicago doesn't have that LA has is that we have this, all the the TV and the movie industry around us that sort of like most of our actors feel like, well, I can do this 99-seat theater until I have to go and do something, and I can just walk away because it's voluntary. I don't have to like feel like I have any commitment to that show, which my feeling is that's why we get a bad rap, because people goes, oh, those actors in LA, they're not serious about the theater because they can just walk out. So there's got to be something that that changes our thinking as a theater, as a community, as artists, that would say, all right, well, what because even at the taper you can get a job there, but you have a 2-week out. I mean, if you're somebody who is already getting $1,500 to $2,000 a week, all of a sudden Spielberg says, here's a $5 million job. Okay, well, here's my 2-week notice.
And it's a mentality. You got to have the mentality that you're going to stick with something as an actor.
But it is, again, I think going back to the previous issue of, it's different people doing different things in different ways. Yeah. And I certainly, for me, like, I'm not a proponent of all theaters must go to minimum wage. I think there is a great place for volunteer theater, whether that's the national tradition of community theater, real community theater, or whether that's, I think, why the 99-seat plan and waiver theater was created, which was let actors and other artists who don't have any money and who have time create something without having to raise a whole bunch of money or spend a whole bunch of money on themselves. Like, that seems really valuable to me for a lot of reasons. For something to do between TV jobs, for exercise, for experimenting with new pieces or new forms. Like, that all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It just seems very mushed with actual businesses and actual nonprofits running theater, and that, again, forces people who just want to create some work to try to be like businesses that they don't really want to be like. And it allows folks who are running real businesses and real nonprofits and those things to, in some people's opinion, to underpay folks and to take advantage of that. So, and that mush together is, I think leads to the legal problem too. On the other cities thing, I think the most interesting thing I've discovered through this process of all these meetings is looking at what the how it works in other cities that let union artists work in 99-seat theaters, in San Francisco and New York in particular, because they have what amounts to 99-seat plans there too. But the two big differences, or the three, I guess, one is those actors don't get paid anything, or they get a Metro card, but no cash. So it's much clearer that it's volunteer, and it's not getting paid a little bit. There are budget caps on what you can spend on those shows, and there's favored nations clauses that says, okay, you cannot pay the actors anything, but then you can't pay anybody else more than you're paying the actors, which, you know, that's a whole different thing than what happens here.
The directors, music directors, nobody gets paid.
Right. Or you know, or everybody gets paid the $300 that you do, or whatever it is that you do.
Right.
But if we're going to operate on this really small level where we're essentially volunteering, then any pay to anybody is the same. And I'm not saying that's exactly what Los Angeles should do, but it's interesting to note that in other cities it works like that, and here in Los Angeles, there's no budget cap. There's, you know, the actors get paid their $9 or whatever it is, but other people can and do get paid a lot more than that. I mean, as a director, I've worked a lot of 99-seat, and I have a pension.
Right.
I don't know any actors who've gotten a pension from doing 99-seat theater.
No.
So it's just a really different thing when you compare with the other cities, and I think that's just an education that's useful for us to then have a conversation about, you know, would the artists of Los Angeles feel happier with something like what San Francisco has, or do they like it this way, or is there some other alternative? But the point is, there's other alternatives that we could talk about.
So you think that maybe a change or a renegotiation of the 99-seat plan will have a cause and effect thing with the mentality of the actors? They'll be maybe a little less flaky, a little less willing to drop because the contract's been renegotiated and it's not such a volunteer thing?
Well, I don't know that they would. I mean, it's very hard to say no to a big budget, you know, salary. I get that part of it, but sometimes, you know, but I do feel that there will be more of a commitment because they feel like they are actually being honored for the work that they're doing, and it doesn't feel, or that it doesn't feel that they're getting something so little, like you had mentioned about musical directors, that they're not getting $9 a show, and then somebody is literally getting $300 a show.
Right.
You know, and it's the same show that they're doing together, you know. But because they're actors, everybody else could just pay them $9 or $12, and there's no real sense of what, you know, that there is a equity, equality in the structure. I mean, I like the idea of, you know, favored nation. If the actors are going to get this much, then everybody else gets this much.
It's fair. It makes
you know,
it fair for
if you're in that level, and if you're not in those trenches, then you should all be doing the same thing. I don't know that will ever happen for Los Angeles, just because there's not enough designers to go around to say that we can, you know. I mean, the reason that it works for the actors is because we have thousands and thousands of actors in this city.
Right.
But we don't have thousands and thousands of designers. We don't have thousands and thousands of theater directors. We don't have thousands of musical directors.
If anything, we have a shortage of all those people.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's why the you know, we pay them more, or we try to get them, because and we pay them for what they want, because there's so little. There's only so many of them.
And this goes to as somebody who's in business school right now, as I am, this goes to sort of a big picture payment question, which I argue with my colleagues all the time, which is, you know, if you take straight supply and demand, you say, oh, there's so many people willing to do this job, so we don't have to pay them anything. That's one philosophy. The other philosophy is to say, okay, it doesn't matter how many people out there are willing to do it. We've hired this person. They're creating this amount of value for the company.
That's right.
They're this crucial. So they need to be compensated based on how important they are to this team. It doesn't matter if there's 1,000 people out there who would do it. What matters is that they're really important here.
That's right.
And that's, you know, I mean, I think that's an argument or discussion happening in the country writ large, not just in
And you
the
have
arts.
those people at so many theaters who do it for no pay, and they spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day at the theater.
Right.
You know, and they're not being compensated for anything. It's silly.
Well, if
there's
everybody's
change.
clear
I
that
think
it's
there's-
volunteer and this is for fun, that's one thing.
Yeah,
It's just
but
a-
acting's hard work. I mean,
It is.
It is.
right.
It is.
It's,
Mr.
I
Chapin.
mean, a lot of people like to be like, you know, oh, actors just get up there and say a bunch of lines. No, it takes rehearsal time. It takes preparation. It takes you know, and actors should be paid.
I think change is coming, so which is great.
Yeah, it's scary,
Yeah.
but it's great. So.
Yeah, I think so too.
I have a question because I'm not in the theater world. I'm an outsider looking in, and it seems like you say, because you actors and actresses do work hard to perform live in front of an audience with little to no mistakes whatsoever. Why is it so hard to generate a reasonable income for everybody who's involved?
Well, I think there's two angles on that, at least in Los Angeles. I think
Contracts, right?
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I would say there's the two things I would say. One is, as opposed to say film, just the distribution method is different. You can only have so many people in the building at a time. So you can only have 50 people or 100 people or even 1,000 people, as opposed to if you make a television show, millions of people can see it like that because you have a distribution. But the other is, I think that somebody was saying the other day to me about the way that in the theater we tend to be so focused on production, putting up the show and putting up another show and putting up another show is the most important thing, that 95% of our effort from all of us, the producers or the artists, is putting up more shows. And in other industries and other businesses, even other arts, they go, well, putting up the show is half of what we do. And the other half is marketing stuff and promotional stuff and fundraising and all these things. And I think for most of us, we're way too heavy on creating the art and the production, and we're not spending the time you need to do all the things to support the production and to get the money and to brand the theater and all of those things. I have certainly in my time when I was at LA Stage Alliance was very aware that on any given day, if I was trying to reach out to people to do something that was big picture to help the whole community, 3/4 of people wouldn't respond because they were too busy putting up a show, which is fair, but it raises a question of, should we try to take a step back and say, let's produce a little less, each of us, not meaning a third of us stop producing at all, but all of us produce a little less and take that energy into building an industry.
Yeah,
that's my answer.
Yeah, because my hat goes off to you guys because I'm not a theater person per se, but being part of this show and meeting the men and women, including yourselves, it's a lot of work. And it definitely is a commitment that you guys choose to make outside of your regular life, and to bring a source of entertainment to a public that some get it and some don't, and that really go out there night after night and perform for people who don't have a clue of what you're doing. And how it is all put together, man. You some kind of way should get compensated.
That is a good point. I really don't think that the audiences know how much goes into a show.
That's right.
I mean, if they're not involved in theater,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know the rehearsal time.
Yeah, I actually talked to a fellow the other day who brought that up. Who's just not an artist at all. He's a doctor, and he said, "Well, is there some way to tell which theaters are making the choice to prioritize compensating the artist as paying the $25 or paying more as opposed to others?" And I said, well, no, not really, but do you care? And it was interesting because he said, of course I care. I care about that the same way I care about which companies are green companies, and how I care about which companies are manufacturing their stuff in China in slave factories. Like, I care a lot about that. If you could tell me, well, these theaters are stepping up and making sure that they're taking care of their people, then that would affect my choices.
Can you list some of those theaters?
Well, we have a list.
There's a list of the $25 ones.
Of the $25, and we will continue coming up with lists as we go along of, as people make changes or voluntarily make changes.
It was just interesting to see that even audience members do have values about different things, and some audience members don't care, and that's fine because they're about But it's good to note that there's different opinions within the artists, within the funders, within the audience, the press too have very different opinions about things.
Because you got some people especially guys, because I'm speaking from a guy's perspective, who girlfriends or wives love the theater, but they couldn't care less, and the only reason why they there is because their significant others drags them there.
Sure,
You know what I mean?
sure.
And
I started working recently for Laguna Playhouse doing their season subscriptions. I talked.
Oh,
to,
nice.
Yeah, I talked to 200 people a day, and you would be amazed how many people. I'll get the wife or the husband on the phone, and they love it, and they go to their spouse, and their spouse doesn't want to do it. It's just a different. I don't know. Different people look at theater different ways.
exactly.
But
Yeah. Well, that's a whole. If you haven't had a radio show talking about the presence of women in the theater, both on stage and off stage, as producers and audience members,
yeah.
you really should, because it's something like 65 or 70% of ticket buyers are women who go to the shows, and then they bring their children, husbands, spouses, friends, parents, whatever, with them, and then the fact that they're still really underrepresented in the writers and the actors and the what's actually produced on the stage is a very strange question and a big deal.
I know that Dorothy agrees with you completely.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
feels strongly about that. She's mentioned that. It's true. They're not represented.
No.
All right. So a lot of things
Yeah.
wrong with LA theater,
And a lot of things
LA
that are great too.
Great
Yeah.
stuff coming
There's
up.
a lot of things to address.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we say that I mean, for me personally, I consider myself very, very lucky to work in LA theater, and there's
Me too.
some I know you guys
All
feel
of
the same
us.
way. There's some things that could be changed, but we're fortunate to work in the industry, and I feel like some change is going to come.
I think so. I think it's coming.
It's going to be amazing to see what the climate of LA theater is in 10 years with
Mhm.
all the changes that
Yeah.
are happening right now
Right.
that haven't happened.
Yeah.
During the 90s
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
early 2000s.
Yeah.
Good.
We'll see. We'll be back in 10 years on
Yeah.
the show. We'll talk about it.
I have to have you back before then.
Oh,
please.
okay. All right.
Doug Clayton and John Lawrence Rivera of the LA Theater Network. Tell everyone again how they can get information about LA Theater Network.
You can email us at latheaternetwork@gmail.com or come in and join the Facebook page at L.A.Theater Network.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Anything you want to plug at your theater that's happening right now?
Well, only that we're in rehearsal now for Luis Alfaro's new play, Painting in Red, that opens at Greenway Court on October 18th.
Oh,
Yes.
Greenway Court is
Yeah.
very cool.
Oh, it's wonderful. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, come and check it out.
I remember driving. I was like 18 or 19. Was one of my first auditions. Was at Greenway
At
Court,
Greenway Court,
coming
yeah.
up from Orange County. Yeah, it was
Oh,
great.
wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I have a play that I wrote
yeah,
that's
that's
opening
right.
next month. So
Yes.
I wrote a play that's part of Wicked Lit this year, which is performed at the Mountain View Mausoleum in Altadena, which is great. So there's 3 plays, and mine's one of them.
Wicked Lit is coming in here next month.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Oh, great.
well, there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. And my play is has a female lead, I'll say, that I wrote, and has a female director, Debbie McMahon, who's fantastic, and is
Well done.
in fact, all of Wicked Lit is very. There's a lot of women in it this year. It's a lot of female-driven stories this year, which is really great. So they're sort of responding to that call in the community, and from the artists they work with, saying, your work's been really male-heavy, and so it's really responded this year. It should be really, really cool this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bianca Giselle isn't in your show, is she?
She's not in my piece that I wrote, but she is in Wicked Lit.
Yeah.
She's in a piece that's all about the Las Lloronas legends in Spain and Mexico. Basically, the sort of Hispanic version of Medea, about women who, for one reason or another, murder their children. So it's really
Awesome.
there's like 8 or 9 different women in that. It's great.
Yeah, I've seen some her posts and things like that.
Yeah.
She's having a great time at Wicked Lit.
Yeah.
So, cool, guys. Thanks
Come
for
on down.
coming in.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you
Come
very
back
much.
anytime. Best of luck to you with everything
you.
you're doing with LA Theater Network. I think it's great. Just
That's
having
right.
the dialogue, having the conversation, and coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most important part.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
If you
man.
want to find information about us, you can go to facebook.com/LaLaLandTalk, Twitter at twitter.com/LaLaLandTalk. You can send us an email if you have somebody that would be interested in being on the show, or if you just want to say hello at LaLaLandTalk@gmail.com. And next week, Dorothy's going to be she's going to have her show opened by next week, so she'll come in. It'll be the night after opening night. She can tell us all about everything that she's doing in her amazing opening night. Go see it at Sustaining Sound Theater Company. It opens on Friday. It's Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, and it's going to be great. And until next week, I am Brett Chapin. Next week we have Michael Seal coming in from Theater Boston Court. He's going to be telling us all about everything that's happening at Boston Court Looking forward to talking to him. Until then, I'm Brett Chapin. This is La La Land on LA Talk Live, and we'll see you at the top.